Do you feel that? Do you feel that in the air? It's kind of feeling like we're almost at the end of the Nintendo Switch 2 official drought of information, and kind of seems like the floodgates are starting to open, because today we have a massive manufacturing leak, you can call it. It really has to do with some internet sleuthing from numerous different individuals who have been tracking down shipments for Nintendo's components, and we now have more or less confirmation, loose confirmation, not from Nintendo themselves, but around how much RAM we should expect to have in the system-based memory due to component shipping, a potential cooling system for the dock in addition to the chipset, the same one we've been expecting this whole time, the T239, but there's a lot of more or less what seems to be concrete information floating around online. Not to mention, towards the end of the video, we're also going to be discussing Furukawa and some more comments that have come out from the Q&A of the investors briefing, where of course they actually officially announced the successor to the Switch and what they are going to be doing from here with official information. So there's a ton to unpack today. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And we have to start this conversation off by hopping over to Universo Nintendo, where they do have an article detailing exactly what's been researched here and the reason why we now might know some additional tech specs and even potentially the size of the Nintendo Switch 2 more or less. So this article is a translation, so keep that in mind when reading through some of this stuff, but Nintendo Switch 2 new findings point to possible technical data of RAM, storage, and more. Console can come close to what the latest generation offers in terms of gaming performance. It's only been a short time since we officially found out that Nintendo will reveal the successor to Nintendo Switch sometime by March 2025, but it looks like even better information has been uncovered. Philippe, who, however you say that, it's Necro Felipe, that's how I say it, along with several other users of FamiBoards forum, which you can see their usernames on screen, have been investigating data on shipments and receipts of parts around the world in recent months to discover potential parts of Nintendo's new system. Because of this, it was possible to update the technical perspective of what we can expect from Nintendo's next hardware, including its RAM, internal storage, and other data. Here's the information in question. NVIDIA T239 confirmed as the console's SoC. It is in its third revision and would cost between $50 and $60 for Nintendo per unit. 12 gigabytes RAM in LPDDR5X with 5700 MT speed, 120 gigabytes dual channel, 256 gigabytes internal storage in UFC 3.1, maximum 2.9 gigabytes uncompressed read. Potential cooler for dock cooling. The dimensions of the hardware with Joy-Con attached would be close to the ROG Ally in length and width. So I like the claim of 12 gigabytes of internal storage personally, and 256 gigabytes when it comes to internal storage. I would love to see a 512 gigabyte model out of the gate. It does seem like 256 is what's being spotted in the shipments, and maybe that's what we should expect for the console's base storage size. But at the same time, the 12 gigabytes of RAM really is more indicative of how games are going to run and how much available memory is going to there as a resource to them when they're developing these games. And some people might kind of stop and think, well, wait a minute, doesn't the Steam Deck have 16 gigabytes? And yes, it does. It's a very different type of system because it's kind of running essentially a PC operating system, Linux, and Steam. While there is optimization and things that happen for the Steam Deck, it's not going to be like the cohesive experience that is built from the ground up from Nintendo for Nintendo games, like we see the kind of some of the impossible ports run on the Switch, if you will, especially towards the beginning of the console's life cycle, when we were learning about the fact that games like Witcher 3 would be able to run just fine on Nintendo Switch, a portable console, and it blew everybody's mind. We may very well be back in that phase, at least towards the beginning of the launch of this console, where we have some massive AAA experiences, open world. Elden Ring comes to mind for me. That's the big one I really want to see make it over. Maybe GTA 6 is in the conversation once we do find out about that game's exact launch, and Nintendo Switch 2 will be out by the time that game launches, no doubt. So could that be on the table? It's a possibility, but at the very least, some of those broad, more open in scope games that we've been missing out on towards the end of the Nintendo Switch's generation, and we've been seeing cloud ports and some simple solutions to get some of those games over to the system. It seems like this new console is going to have more than enough power to be in the conversation to run those games, not to mention with the shortcuts that developers will have with DLSS and AI upscaling. That's going to be a game changer, and I am personally very hyped for it. Now, in terms of the dimensions of the console, I found that this was pretty interesting because we had heard reports that with the new Joy-Cons attached. This console is bigger than a Nintendo Switch OLED, but it is not as big as a Steam Deck. And now they are pointing to the Asus ROG Ally specifically. So as you can see the image on screen with all 4 devices lined up, that is almost, it's probably close enough to what to kind of expect in terms of a base size comparison. As you can see, a ROG Ally is legitimately between a Steam Deck and a Nintendo Switch. Now, it might be just a little bit smaller than the ROG Ally, but just to give you that baseline comparison, this is going to be a beefier console than what we have today with our Nintendo Switches when playing in handheld mode. It is also very interesting to me that there is the claim of a potential cooler within the docking station of the Nintendo Switch. Are we talking about ramping up the voltage significantly to the point where Nintendo does actually need to cool this thing off in the dock itself? That is very possible and also very exciting when you talk about maybe where the performance ramps up to when you are in docked mode. We could be talking about much more impressive performance on a television with upscaling to 4K via DLSS. That's all the claims from Gamescom 2023. Breath of the Wild running in 4K with no load times. Matrix Awakening demo showing off things like the ray tracing and ray reconstruction, which to the developers' eyes look better than that of what was available on PS5 and Series X. And you do have to realize that this is not going to outpunch PS5 and Series X in any way, shape, or form in terms of raw power, but it has also been since the end of 2020, since those consoles were released, and AI technology has come a long way since then, and we know that even Sony with their PS5 Pro is going to be a massive leap forward because of those leaked specs, because they are utilizing an AI upscaling technology as well. That is definitely where the future is heading. So I really like these specs. Of course, nothing is official until Nintendo announces it, but it does seem like there's some good information based off what's being shipped here. And we are in that season where Nintendo's acknowledged their plans for this thing. They could literally start talking about games for this thing at any time, even as soon as the upcoming Nintendo Direct over the summer, not to mention Summer Game Fest and all the third-party stuff going on. We could get a lot of Switch 2 logos at the end of it, or Nintendo successor, whatever they're going to refer to it as. They could say this is coming to Nintendo consoles, new projects, new games for the next generation, now that it's officially acknowledged by Nintendo. And when things go into mass manufacturing, we will no doubt see more leaks like this, more confirmations, and probably even get a look at the shell of the console eventually. So that's very exciting. And then perfectly transitioning into how we might be able to expect future news for this console, we actually had a very interesting comment from the latest Q&A that's now been officially transcribed from Nintendo, and we might make another video deep diving a lot of it because there is some interesting things said. But the one thing I want to focus in on for the purpose of this video and Nintendo Switch 2 information and how we should expect to get it, well, for that we need to hop over to My Nintendo News, where you can see the following article that reads, Nintendo says that we will continue to release info about next console in phases. Nintendo's recent results briefing and investors Q&A was a big one for multiple reasons. A Nintendo Direct was announced for June. The company acknowledged their next hardware for the first time, and the Nintendo Switch's lifetime sales continue to get closer to the lifetime sales of Sony's PlayStation 2. However, Nintendo President Shintaro Furukawa wasn't quite done talking about what the plans are for Nintendo's next console. Investors were curious about it in the Q&A meeting that was held. According to Furukawa, as with previous announcements of the new hardware, we will continue to release new information in phases leading up to launch. If you recall, this was a similar approach to the way that Nintendo unveiled the Switch. They first acknowledged it in an investors meeting in early 2016. They then revealed it via a trailer in October that same year. Then they went more in depth about the console in a special presentation that was held in January of 2017. It seems that Nintendo will be doing the same with the next console. You can see a tweet relaying the news of Furukawa's remarks down below. And that tweet in question is just exactly what we read through there, so we won't read through it again, but you get the idea here, and this is very much my mindset at this point in time. With all of the reports that have been corroborated by numerous outlets suggesting that there was at one point an internal delay and that the date became, instead of 2024, late 2024 for this console's launch, Nintendo pivoted and decided to move that date to March of 2025, and that's what they are now telling all their developers. I think we are going to see a pretty close copy and paste scenario to what we saw the original Switch launch with in terms of marketing. So if I'm a betting man, we learn about this console more officially in the fall, and since he's saying phases, maybe we get one post with just the name and even a look at the console, a picture of the console, or something where it's there but it's kind of blacked out, kind of like what we see like Apple and Microsoft do, like, oh, the next generation's coming, it's this name, and then we get an actual first look trailer in October, right leading into the holiday season to get everybody hyped up for this thing getting ready to come. They might even do a Switch price drop this holiday season to try to hit that 13.5 million units that they are forecasting for it. Then January 2025, I'm expecting fully Nintendo to announce some kind of hands-on event. Maybe it's live, maybe it's pre-recorded, but it's that closer look at the console, explaining all the new features. Oh, and I should also mention there's some reports floating around tied to these shipments that a microphone may be included in this thing as well, which doesn't seem that surprising. That might be like a really good, simple addition to add on, and then that way, if Nintendo does get on board with voice chat, you can do it straight from your console, kind of like how you can with the PS5 controller, where you're just able to do voice chat that way. It's not ideal, but it's included in the box and it's an easy solution, so not a bad thing there. But I think once that January event happens and we know all the ins and outs of the features of this thing, then we're talking about pre-orders getting ready for shipments, and we're going to have it in our hands in March of next year. At least that's very much how I'm feeling. There's always the possibility that another internal shift happens or something gets pushed back further, but that's where I really want to hear from you guys at this point in the video. Where's your hype levels at now that we have official confirmation from Nintendo that the Switch successor is definitely going to be their focus moving forward? And are you excited for any of these new reports with the 12 gigs of internal memory when it comes to RAM, 256 gigabytes of actual storage memory? What do you think of a cooler for the dock, and then the dimensions of the hardware being similar to that of a ROG Ally? Does that seem too big to you? Is that kind of where you expected it to land? And what do you make of Furukawa's comments? When do you think we're going to see Nintendo officially acknowledge the system again, and in what kind of way do you think we will see them do it next? So thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. Make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless of if we agree or disagree. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn on your notification bell, and I will see you guys in the next video.